Let's paint a picture. Your party is 2 layers deep in the mega dungeon of a Great Lich. They've fought smart, hard, calculated, conserved their resources, and made tactical moves the whole way through. And finally, they meet their true match. 2 Fomorians guarding a locked door. They start taking devastating blows, pummeled into walls, thrown against the floor, and finally, the wizard of the party gets hit so hard that she falls unconscious. She's unresponsive, unmoving, on the ground, and at the doors of death. A dramatic moment indeed. But fear not, it's quickly alleviated because the bard's up next. They cast Healing Word, and the wizard's basically up again. Good to go. Jump into the fray once again. Hell, that was so easy to do that the bard still has their whole main action and movement to use. And the wizard still has access to all of their abilities, no matter how scrambled they were from that hit or how devastating of a blow they just took. They're jumping right back in. This is what hitting 0 HP in D&D 5e is often like. It feels like something that should be very dramatic, very high stakes, than an actual crisis. Being on the doors of death is often very easy to alleviate. And the actual consequences of hitting 0, taking a blow so hard that you lose consciousness and can no longer act, think, or communicate, well, even at its worst, you can probably sleep it off. At the end of the day, this is fine. This is how the game was designed after all. 5e thrives on making you feel as heroic as possible, weighing systems in the favor of the players so that you feel like indomitable, epic heroes who can just keep going through impossible odds. But what if this doesn't exactly fit the setting you're running? What if you and the people you play with want this moment of hitting 0 HP to have more drama, more effect? What if you want something a little more rigorous in place so that taking such a devastating attack and falling to your knees and going unconscious isn't something that you can just shake off in a matter of seconds? If you do want to run this kind of game, there are already a few tweaks out there at your disposal. One is the very common house rule of incurring a level of exhaustion anytime you fall to 0. This is what Joe does in our campaigns here on this channel, and it works great. It's a simple change that doesn't add any complexity to the game, really, but it adds just enough weight to hitting 0 HP that you feel it. It matters. You want to avoid hitting 0, and as long journeys and dungeon crawls go on, if you hit 0 multiple times, you really begin to feel it. Another tweak can be found in the Dungeon Master's Guide, a small paragraph entitled Gritty Realism. This equally simple change just tweaks the amount of time that resting takes. A short rest now takes 8 hours instead of 1, and a long rest an entire week. This doesn't change what happens the instant you hit 0 HP, but it certainly makes the consequences a lot bigger. It forces tactical play and resource conservation in a way that the rules as written simply don't. When taking a long rest in a wilderness trek or a dungeon crawl is practically impossible, it definitely changes how you play. Both of these rules are great, and if they work for you, you can just click off this video now. But I wouldn't do that if I were you. I would stay right here. Because I've thought of a homebrew system centered around the event of hitting 0 HP. Something that makes that moment itself scary. Something that forces tactical play and enemies and players to fight in a way where they conserve their own life and safety above immediate victory. It's also a system that makes people who throw away that concern all the more threatening, and players who sacrifice themselves all the more heroic. It's a system that I call the point of no return, and it involves a simple question. When your player hits 0, they don't just go down. They're presented an option. Stay down, or get up. Now, before we dive in, I just want to give a quick nod to an MCDM video that many of you have likely seen, A Heroic Death. A lot of the ideas I discuss here are going to be similar, so I just wanted to shout that out. If you haven't already seen it for some reason, I think that game is going in a great direction, and there's a lot of good ideas there, D&D related or not. But for now, we're going to look at a slightly different system that doesn't just affect the moment of death, but the moments before death, something that makes combat more grounded, horror more horrifying, and sacrifices all the more heroic. But for now, let's not start with death. Let's start with injuries. What is the act that causes you to hit 0? Part 1, injuries. Let's frame what hitting 0 HP actually means in this system. Picture a movie fight scene between a hero and villain. They're clashing blades, dancing back and forth, parrying, dodging, blocking, keeping up with each other's advances, surprising each other with new techniques and strategies, until finally, one of them lands a devastating blow. It's not just a graze on the arm, it's not just a smack on the chest. It's something that brings them to their knees, makes them wonder if they can even get up anymore, if they can even finish this fight. That is the moment of hitting 0 HP. When using the point of no return system, we want to draw attention to this moment of the fight, to make that hit extra cinematic and weighted and affect the decisions that your players are going to make when they are given that critical choice of staying down or getting up. Recall our example from earlier where the wizard was knocked down so hard that they fell unconscious. In this system, if you are healed, you can get up. You can keep fighting, but you can't just shake that off. A hit like that is going to leave a mark. And that is where the 0 HP injuries come in. Based on the type of damage that brought the player character to 0, an injury table can be generated. A variety of effects that can occur when they take a devastating blow of that damage type. I will, for example, give you a potential D4 table that you can use for slashing damage. When the player hits 0, you hand them the D4, they roll it themselves, and you read to them the devastating effect. These are meant to simulate the kinds of injuries that stick. As such, they have not only a detriment, but a way of alleviating them. Standard healing, things that only take a few seconds in game, typically aren't going to work. If you want to actually heal this nasty wound, you're going to have to put in a bit of effort. And that also means if you're brought back up and have to keep fighting, this is something you'll need to contend with. So here are 4 things that could happen to a player that hit 0 from a slashing attack. 1 being the most severe, and 4 being the most mild. 1 is a sliced tendon that can impact movement. If it happened on the player's leg, reduce their total movement speed by half. If it happened in an arm, weapon attacks are imposed with disadvantage. The way to alleviate this is with magical healing and with a D4 days of rest. 2 is a deep cut that keeps the player from fully recovering and produces bleed damage. Their maximum HP is reduced by 10, and they will take a D4 of bleed every hour that this wound is not treated. It must be sealed with magical healing, but it has a chance of reopening for the next D4 days, anytime the player character takes 10 or more damage. A 3 is an unsightly scar. Through pure luck, it didn't hit anything vital, but it is going to leave a mark on you that, depending on your situation, may impose disadvantage on charisma checks or make other people distrustful of you. And a 4, I'm running out of positions, is like a 3, but it happened to occur on a place where socially you won't be affected much. Congratulations, you survived a near-death experience, and now you have a cool scar to show people at parties or on first dates. That's just one way you could approach injuries from this effect. I'm sure some of you listening noticed some rules that seemed unbalanced, wonky, complicated, and that's okay. I'd rather give you a formula to get your brain thinking about this kind of stuff than a rigorously play-tested PDF with individual tables for every damage type. The simple truth is that the balance of fun and challenging and the balance of chaotic and ordered that your table is going to want is up to you. Just make sure that whatever effects you come up with are fun and are a setback without being a brick wall. You don't want to keep your players from participating, but you do want to make the act of hitting 0 HP matter. And just think of all the unique things you can do with a roll table based on shock damage, or poison, or psychic. With these roll tables in place, concrete consequences have been tied to the event of hitting 0 HP in a way that is not present in the rules as written. Even if your players are confident that they can heal themselves up after a fight, they will be more tactical during the fight to avoid this consequence, and more tactical before. weighing whether or not certain risks are worth it. Enemies may also fight with the same level of concern or not, depending on your discretion as a DM. Under this system, part of the terror of an undead, for example, is that they don't fight tactically. They don't preserve their HP, retreat and heal when needed, they just keep coming. And that's something that your more squishy, prone to injury players are going to have to contend with. When I was implementing this system, I noticed that my players were using tactical maneuvers in a way that they often didn't in order to avoid this damage. Not in a way that was boring, tedious, or completely risk avoidant. No, in a way that was actually pretty exciting to watch. People were taking the dodge action to draw away attention from the rest of the party. People were readying actions instead of jumping right in every turn, waiting for an opportune moment. They were planning before, during, and after to a more rigorous degree. In fact, Nick, you were in a campaign where I used this system. Do you want to talk about it a bit?
I liked it a lot. It was fun.
That's part one of this system, setting up consequences for zero with this injury table. The simple truth is, your characters are going to behave differently when absolute death isn't the only consequence of violence, when you can't just sleep off what might happen anytime you enter combat. But these injury tables are simply the foundation for the dramatic choice. They are flavor that adds to the emotional and dramatic weight of that experience, so that when you present the choice, players have all the more context to go off of. Stay down or get up. Part 2, the choice.
Which way? Huh? What?
Your player has hit 0 HP. They've dealt with the consequence of the random injury roll table. In this system, hitting 0 HP also does all the other things. You're incapacitated, you're unconscious, and you start rolling death saves. If you stay down. Because with this system, like the hero in the action movie scene we imagined earlier, you can look at your wounds, look to your allies, see the odds that they're still up against, and decide that your life is worth losing. You can get back up, you can push your physical instrument beyond its limits, and finish this fight no matter what. So by the time your player is making this decision, a few things will have likely happened. They've incurred an injury from the roll table, and the severity of it is going to affect their decision. They've likely had a couple more turns to see how the party is doing as well. Maybe other people have fallen, maybe the odds seem insurmountable, or maybe it seems like the people that are up can handle this. Now, it is possible for the player to be healed and to get up when their turn rolls around as usual. They'll still be dealing with the injury, of course, but otherwise things proceed as normal. But let's assume that doesn't happen. Let's assume that it gets back to their turn, they're at 0, they have this injury, and no one has healed them. This is when the choice comes in. Before you roll death saves at all, you ask that player what their decision is, to stay down or get up. Stay down is a passive decision that can be made every turn. Essentially from here, things happen as normal. You roll the death saves, you can be stabilized, you can be healed, and so on. You're down, and when you get back up later on, you'll still have your injury to deal with. But for all intents and purposes, you are choosing to live. You're choosing to stay out of this fight, deal with the wounds you have, and live to fight another day. Unless, of course, you fail your death saves, which still implements a level of risk. If nobody's able to come help you in 2 or 3 rounds, well, that might be it. Get up, however, is the active choice. And from here, everything changes. As soon as you have chosen get up instead of stay down, you have locked yourself in to a heroic final moment. Death saves, unconsciousness, incapacitation, and falling prone, all out the window. Once a player declares that they are getting up, they still have their injury from the roll table to deal with, but they can do everything else as normal. They can continue to fight, move, cast spells, and help their allies win the fight. And it isn't until the fight is over, or that they hit the negative of their maximum HP, that they're dead. But that is the trade-off. A player who chooses get up will die. No questions. Healing, potions, quick rests, any sort of class abilities you have that would prevent this from happening, it's out the window. Even if you choose get up when you're at -1 HP, and then the cleric heals you for 60, it doesn't matter. You have locked yourself in. Your body and your mind were telling you that you can no longer fight, and you chose to keep going anyway. Pushing yourself through beyond that limit is going to be the last heroic decision that your character makes. Your player character will have to look at how the fight is progressing and decide if their death is worth sparing the death of everyone else in their party. By doubling down on the consequences of hitting 0 HP, making it more brutal than in the rules as written, we actually have opened up a more heroic possibility for a player that decides to press through that and sacrifice their own life despite everything against them. Whenever somebody chooses get up, the energy of the table changes. Those last few moves of combat become incredibly significant. And on the flip side, if the party chooses stay down, this also has lots of room for drama. Imagine the one person who remains standing throughout the fight, stabilizing all of their allies, and now having to deal with all of their injuries while they're in the middle of a dungeon, or the woods, or on top of an icy mountain, knowing that nobody's going to be back up to full health before they get some serious help. I like to think with this more brutal and grounded and difficult combat system that you can use, the heroics have not been taken away from the rules as written. They've just become harder to earn, and therefore, twice as sweet when they do. And as a little bonus, optional rule, when the fight winds down and that character who chose to go through the point of no return is starting to die, get out a D10. Start rolling it every few seconds, or maybe after every sentence or two they say. And as soon as you roll a 1, that's it. They draw their last breath. It's just a fun little way to add a little bit more drama, a little bit more finality. Maybe they get to wrap everything up, and maybe they don't. Their body's now failing them, the adrenaline of the fight gone. But if you don't want to take that one and you want to give your players a chance to wrap everything up in the final moments, you certainly can. I've given you enough new rules as it is. Part 3, cons of this system.
Well, I mean, I thought it was pretty. I guess I can understand their cons.
So if you've made it this far, you're probably starting to wonder if this set of rules will actually work for your table. Obviously, I quite like it, but I've also had a chance to use it and dwell on it for a few years since I first came up with it, and I think it's only fair that I tell you about some of the drawbacks that I have noticed with it, despite how much I like it, over the years, so that you save some time. The first is that, like anything that's grounded in D&D 5e, it's just not going to work very well at higher levels. For the same reason that counting rations and buying lengths of rope and getting anti-poison and little things like that kind of fall to the wayside as you level up, if you were even doing them at all, this system probably just isn't going to work past the 3rd tier of play. There's just only so much that can phase a level 12 cleric. And speaking of things like rations and ropes, the second drawback of this is that in a longer campaign at least, it has the potential of introducing tedium. The second severe injury from bludgeoning damage is never going to be as exciting as the first. And by the third, well, your players are going to generally know what to do. It's going to be more of a setback than a dramatic moment, and now we're back to square one. For the novelty of a system like this to remain and not just become oppressive and tedious and boring, I would recommend using it in a particular setting with a clear start and end. Something to add a layer of crunch to an environment that you already want to feel tough. The third issue is technicalities. Like presented in the MCDM video, there are moments where a system that allows you to have a heroic final moment can be a little wonky. What happens when a player is thrown into a river of lava? Can they just crawl out and keep fighting? Anytime you poke a homebrew-sized hole in an established system, there's going to be a few confusing situations. But in my experience, situations like this are few and far between, and they can usually be alleviated with optional ruling on the fly. Just be prepared to do such things as a DM, and know that you're with the kind of players that are okay with you making those kind of calls. And the final issue, if it even is one for your table, is that it does encourage an added level of risk. The only reason I bring this up as an issue is that narratives tend to be about risk. They tend to be about characters braving dangerous situations and heading into danger without knowing all of the information. Adding a system like this could, at the wrong table or in the wrong campaign, add way too much deliberation and careful planning to the point where all of the risk, the thrill, and the fun is taken out. But at the right table, it can do the exact opposite. Encourage tactics and thoughtfulness in a way that benefits the experience. Just know your table, know your campaign, and know what kind of story you want to tell. But despite all these potential pitfalls, I had a lot of fun using this homebrew system, and I hope that you do too. It adds just a good level of spice and drama to the moment of hitting 0 HP. And even if you don't like the whole system, I hope there's something of value for you here. Conclusions. The malleability of D&D 5e.
Oh, hey, look at that. We're at the end. Hopefully there's nothing else about it. Why does this keep happening to me?
So there's the system. Like it, hate it, use it, don't, it's all cool. Because to me, the cool thing about D&D 5e is its generalness, its malleability. D&D 5e is general in a way that allows for a lot of adaptability. It's the vanilla Skyrim of the TTRPG world that we all get to mod to our heart's content. This particular mod is good for particular settings. I certainly wouldn't use it in every campaign. And there are times where the rules as written are going to work better. But this is a mod that sounds fun to you. Here you go, and I hope you enjoy. If you're interested, we run multiple campaigns. They're live played on Twitch and then uploaded to YouTube. And we also have a variety of D&D related content. We have speed paint videos, interviews with players, and dungeon master advice and homebrew videos like this. Stick around if that's something you'd be interested in, and I'll see you soon for another weird take. That's going to be the end of the video.